You know that sinking feeling when someone you care about starts ignoring you? It could be a partner, a friend, or even a colleague. You feel confused, unworthy, and maybe even angry. Let me tell you something important. That pain you feel, it's real, it's valid, and it matters. But here's the twist. Being ignored isn't just a rejection, it's also a reflection. It holds up a mirror not only to the other person, but to you and your inner world. When someone ignores us, it stirs our deepest insecurities. Am I not good enough? Did I do something wrong? These questions come from our innate human need for connection, which is wired into our very biology. Ignoring strikes at the heart of our need to belong. But here's the thing. Being ignored isn't just an end. It's also a beginning. It's a sign that something in the relationship, in you or in them, needs attention. It's a signal to pause, reflect, and grow. Because being ignored doesn't define you, it teaches you. It teaches you about your boundaries, your needs, and your self-worth. The question isn't why are they ignoring me, but what is this situation asking me to learn? Let's dig into this further with 10 truths to guide you when someone's silence feels like a storm. Rejection triggers our survival instincts in ways that are deeply ingrained in us. Humans are wired for connection. It's not just an emotional need, but a biological one. From the moment we're born, our brains are designed to seek closeness, to build bonds, and to rely on others for safety and support. When someone ignores us, it feels like an invisible wound. And that's because the same regions of the brain that process physical pain are activated when we experience social rejection. Think about that for a moment. The ache you feel when you're excluded or ignored isn't just in your head, it's real. The body interprets being ignored as a threat, much like it would if we were in physical danger. It's an evolutionary mechanism. In ancient times, being left out of a group could mean losing protection, food, or even survival. That same primal fear still lingers within us. So when someone ignores us, our brain sounds the alarm. Something's wrong, you're at risk. It's why you feel unsettled, why your thoughts might spiral, or why you can't seem to shake the discomfort. But it's important to recognize that this pain, though it feels overwhelming, isn't meant to break you. It's there to alert you, to push you to evaluate what's happening and why. The discomfort of being ignored is your mind's way of calling attention to your need for connection. It's a reminder of just how much relationships mean to us, how much being seen and heard matters. And yet, while that pain feels intense, it doesn't have to define your worth. Rejection, as sharp as it feels, isn't permanent. It's a moment, not a verdict. The challenge is to acknowledge the pain without letting it consume you. It's to recognize that the hurt doesn't mean you're unworthy or unlovable. It means you're human. And being human means feeling deeply, because connection is not just a desire, it's a need. A need that reminds us of how much we're meant to belong, even when the world around us feels silent. When someone ignores you, it's easy to assume it's because of something you said or did. Your mind starts replaying conversations, searching for mistakes, wondering where things went wrong. But here's the truth, it's not always about you. In many cases, their silence has far more to do with what they're going through than anything you've done. People carry unseen burdens, stress, insecurities, fears that shape how they interact with the world. They may be struggling with their own emotions, overwhelmed by life, or simply unsure of how to communicate what they're feeling. Ignoring someone is often less about rejection and more about avoidance. Avoidance of conflict, avoidance of vulnerability, or avoidance of dealing with something they don't know how to handle. It's important to remember that everyone has their own inner battles. And sometimes the way they act or don't act toward you is a reflection of those battles. It doesn't mean you're to blame. It doesn't mean you failed. It just means they're human, navigating their own complexities just like you. The silence can still hurt, though. Even when you understand it's not about you, it can feel deeply personal. But stepping back and seeing the bigger picture can bring clarity. It can help you separate their actions from your worth. It's not your job to fix someone else's struggles or to decode their silence. What you can do is offer compassion to them and to yourself. Compassion for the fact that we're all imperfect. Compassion for the fact that communication is hard and sometimes people fall short. And compassion for yourself, because feeling hurt doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. When someone ignores you, it's not always a statement about you. It's often a reflection of their own unspoken story. A story you may never fully understand, but one that reminds us all of how complex, messy, and deeply human we are. Silence speaks louder than words, even when it feels like an absence. When someone ignores you, it's not the lack of communication that stings. It's the message hidden within it. Because silence is a form of communication. It says something even when no words are spoken. It can signal unresolved issues lingering beneath the surface of a relationship, waiting to be addressed. It can reflect discomfort, the kind that makes someone retreat rather than engage. Or, in some cases, it reveals emotional immaturity, the inability to handle tough conversations or confront difficult emotions. Silence can be intentional, a deliberate choice to create distance or avoid conflict. It can also be unintentional, born out of someone's own confusion, overwhelm, or fear. But regardless of the reason, silence leaves its mark. It leaves you wondering, questioning, and trying to fill in the blanks. And in that void, your mind starts to craft its own narratives, many of which aren't kind to yourself. But here's the thing. Silence often says more about the person giving it than the one receiving it. It reveals where they are emotionally, what they're struggling with, or what they're avoiding. It's a signal, not a verdict. And while it's tempting to take that silence personally, it's not always about you. Sometimes their silence is about their inability to communicate. Other times, it's their way of maintaining control or protecting themselves from vulnerability. Silence can feel like rejection, but it can also be an opportunity, a chance to reflect on what's happening and what you need. It can teach you to listen to the unspoken, to read between the lines, and to trust your instincts. It can remind you that you deserve clarity, not confusion, that you deserve respect, not avoidance, and that, even in silence, you have the power to decide how much space someone's absence takes up in your life. Silence speaks volumes, but you don't have to carry its weight alone, because what truly matters is how you respond to it and how you choose to honor yourself in the process. Being ignored has a way of drawing lines you may not have noticed before. It forces you to look closely at the relationship, at what's given and what's withheld. In the silence, boundaries are revealed. When someone ignores you, it shines a light on the effort or lack of effort they're willing to put into the connection. It shows where communication falters, where respect may be missing, and where priorities don't align. Boundaries are the invisible framework of every relationship. They define what's acceptable, what's mutual, and what's not. And being ignored can be a painful but powerful reminder of those limits. It can clarify how much someone values your time, your energy, and your presence. When someone withdraws or chooses silence, it tells you something about their capacity to engage. It might reveal their discomfort with conflict or their unwillingness to invest in deeper connection. And while that realization can sting, it also gives you clarity. Clarity about what you're willing to accept and what you're not, about how much of yourself you'll give to someone who isn't meeting you halfway. Boundaries are not just about protecting yourself from harm. They're about honoring your worth, your energy, and your emotional well-being. When you feel ignored, it's an invitation to evaluate those boundaries. Are they strong enough to protect your peace? Are they clear enough to define what you need and deserve? Being ignored can feel like a door closing, but sometimes it's a door you needed to see. It's a chance to decide whether the relationship serves you or if it's draining you. To ask yourself if the respect and effort are mutual or if it's time to walk away. Because a relationship without healthy boundaries is one-sided. And being ignored is often a sign that those boundaries need to be reinforced, adjusted, or in some cases, redefined entirely. Boundaries aren't just about saying no to others. They're about saying yes to yourself. And sometimes silence is the moment that reminds you to do exactly that. When someone chooses silence, it's easy to feel invisible. You start questioning your value, replaying every interaction, searching for what you did wrong. But here's a truth that silence can't erase. Your value remains intact. It doesn't shrink because someone else fails to acknowledge it. You are not defined by their silence. You are not diminished by their inability to see you. Your worth is not tied to their actions, their attention, or their approval. It's easy to believe that being ignored means you're not enough, not important, not lovable, not worthy. But that belief is a lie your pain tries to tell you. Someone else's silence often reflects their own struggles, their own limitations, their own fears. It's a statement about them, not about you. You are still whole, still worthy, still deserving of love and respect, regardless of how someone else treats you. Your value doesn't depend on whether they choose to show up or stay silent. It doesn't waver based on someone else's ability to meet you where you are. Their silence may hurt, but it doesn't define who you are. It doesn't take away your kindness, your strength, your courage, or your light. You are more than their neglect, more than their avoidance, more than their silence. Your value is rooted in who you are, not in how others perceive you. Not everyone will see your worth, and not everyone will know how to honor it. But that doesn't mean it's any less real. Your value is yours to carry, to protect, and to believe in. No silence, no rejection, no moment of being ignored can ever take that away, because your worth isn't something anyone else gets to decide. It's something you carry within you, steady and unshaken, no matter how the world around you responds. When someone ignores you, the first instinct is often to react. Maybe you feel the urge to chase them, to demand answers, to close the gap their silence has created, or perhaps anger rises to the surface, tempting you to lash out, to match their withdrawal with your own sharp words. But here's the thing about those impulses. They rarely bring clarity or resolution. They come from a place of pain, of feeling unseen, and they push you to act before you've had a chance to truly understand what's happening. This is where you need to pause, take a breath, resist the urge to immediately respond to the discomfort, because reacting without reflection often leads to more confusion, not less. In that pause, ask yourself, what am I feeling? Is it hurt, rejection, anger? And more importantly, why? What is this silence stirring within me? Sometimes it's not the person ignoring you that causes the deepest pain. It's the story their silence awakens in your mind. The belief that you're not enough, the fear of being abandoned, the insecurity that whispers you've done something wrong. Pausing allows you to separate what's happening now from the stories you've carried for years. It gives you space to sit with your feelings instead of letting them take control. It's not easy to pause when you're hurting. Silence creates a void, and the human instinct is to fill it. But filling it with rushed words, assumptions, or reactions only adds to the chaos. Pausing doesn't mean ignoring what you feel. It means giving yourself the grace to process before you act, to understand what you truly need, whether it's clarity, closure, or simply a moment to breathe. When you pause, you reclaim your power. You choose to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. You give yourself the gift of reflection, and in doing so, you honor your emotions without letting them rule you. Because sometimes the most powerful response is the one that comes after the stillness, after the understanding, after the pause. Pain has a way of demanding your attention. It's uncomfortable, undeniable, and often feels impossible to ignore. But beneath the hurt lies an opportunity, a chance to grow. Pain is a powerful teacher, one that speaks in a language of discomfort, but delivers lessons you can't learn any other way. When someone's actions or silence cause you pain, it's tempting to focus on the source of it, to fixate on the person or the situation that hurt you. But the deeper truth is that pain can be a mirror. It reflects what's unresolved within you. It reveals the parts of you that long for healing, the wounds you've carried silently, perhaps for years. Instead of running from it or numbing it, lean into it. Ask yourself, what is this pain trying to teach me? Maybe it's showing you the boundaries you need to set. Maybe it's asking you to confront fears you've avoided or to acknowledge a part of yourself you've overlooked. Pain often forces us to slow down, to step back, and to reevaluate what we truly need. It strips away distractions and brings us face to face with what matters most. As painful as it is, it can also be the spark that ignites transformation. Because growth doesn't happen in comfort zones. It happens in the messy, uncomfortable spaces where you're forced to adapt, to rebuild, to rise. Pain teaches resilience. It shows you that you can survive what feels unbearable and come out stronger on the other side. It teaches empathy, giving you a deeper understanding of what others might be going through. And it teaches self-awareness, helping you recognize your triggers, your needs, and your capacity to heal. This doesn't mean you should seek pain or glorify it, but when it finds you, and it will, let it guide you toward growth. Let it deepen your understanding of yourself and your relationships. Let it remind you that even in your most vulnerable moments, you have the strength to learn, to adapt, and to rise. Pain isn't the end of your story, it's a chapter, one that can lead to wisdom, strength, and a renewed sense of self if you let it. When someone's silence fills the space between you, it's easy to let it echo inside your mind. You start wondering if you weren't enough, if their lack of response reflects something missing in you. But here's what you need to remember. Self-worth is an inside job. Their silence is not a measure of your value. Your worth isn't determined by how others treat you, by their attention or their absence. It's something that lives within you, untouched by the noise or the quiet of the outside world. When silence stings, practice self-compassion. Pause and remind yourself that feeling hurt doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. You're allowed to feel, to acknowledge the pain, and to give yourself the kindness you might have hoped to receive from them. Shift your focus inward. Instead of letting their silence define you, remind yourself of your strengths. Think about the challenges you've overcome, the love you've given, the growth you've achieved. You are more than this moment. You are more than someone else's inability to respond. Self-worth isn't about waiting for others to validate you. It's about knowing deep down that you are whole as you are. It's about recognizing that their silence may say something about them, but it says nothing about your value. When you start to doubt yourself, speak to yourself as you would a dear friend. Would you tell them they're unworthy because someone failed to see their light? Of course not. You'd remind them of their beauty, their resilience, their unique gifts. Offer yourself that same kindness. Hold space for your emotions, but don't let them redefine your sense of self. Self-worth isn't built on how others show up for you. It's built on how you show up for yourself. Their silence may feel loud, but it doesn't drown out the truth. You are enough exactly as you are. When someone ignores you, it can feel like a door slamming shut, but sometimes that silence isn't an ending, it's an opportunity, a moment to reset. It's a chance to step back and evaluate the dynamics at play, to ask yourself, are my expectations realistic? Am I communicating clearly, or are things getting lost in the spaces between us? Ignoring can be a signal that something needs to shift. Maybe it's the way you've been approaching the relationship. Maybe it's the way boundaries have blurred or how effort has become one-sided. Or maybe it's the relationship itself that needs to be reconsidered. Resets aren't always comfortable. They ask you to confront what isn't working, to acknowledge what you've been avoiding, and to make choices that aren't always easy. But resets also hold the power to realign, to rebuild communication that feels authentic and respectful, to redefine expectations so they honor both your needs and theirs. And sometimes to release what no longer serves you. Silence, though painful, can be a pause button, a moment to reflect instead of react. It gives you space to see the bigger picture, to understand whether this relationship is nurturing you or draining you, to decide whether it's worth holding on to or if it's time to let go. A reset doesn't mean starting over. It means recalibrating. It means finding a path forward that feels more aligned with who you are and what you deserve. Sometimes ignoring is just the wake-up call you need to take that step. Because a relationship worth having will grow stronger from honest reflection and intentional change. And a relationship that can't survive the reset is one that was asking too much of you in the first place. The silence may hurt, but within it lies the power to reset. Not just the relationship, but how you show up for yourself. When someone ignores you, it feels like a rejection. It stirs up all sorts of emotions: hurt, confusion, frustration. But sometimes that silence is actually a blessing in disguise. It's not the end of something good, but the universe clearing space for something better. Being ignored can be a sign that not everyone in your life is meant to stay, and that's okay. Not every person is meant to be a permanent fixture in your journey. Some people are there for a season, and when their time is up, they fade away. Their silence isn't a reflection of your worth. It's just a signal that they no longer align with your path, your growth, or your values. Though it may hurt to let go, it can open up room for the people who truly value and respect you, the ones who see you for who you are and want to show up in your life with love and consistency. Sometimes being ignored is the universe's way of protecting you from relationships that drain you. It's an invitation to release what isn't serving you so you can make space for those who will. Though it's painful in the moment, letting go creates an opportunity for deeper connections, ones that honor your worth and nourish your soul. So when someone ignores you, take a step back and trust that there's something better waiting. It might not be clear right now, but in time you'll see that their absence was the space needed for those who truly see you. So when you're faced with the pain of being ignored, remember, it doesn't diminish your worth. It's a moment to pause, reflect, and grow. To remind yourself that your value comes from within, not from someone else's recognition. It's an opportunity to reset, to reassess the relationships in your life, and to create the space for the people who truly see, respect, and value you. Because not everyone is meant to stay, and sometimes that's the very thing that allows the right people to come in. Trust that you are worthy of love, respect, and connection. And know that even in moments of silence, you remain whole, capable, and enough. Your journey is yours to walk, and every step you take, whether with others or on your own, brings you closer to the life you deserve. Let this silence be a reminder that your worth is unshakable and your best days are still ahead.